hockey. Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And welcome into Judd's Hockey Show. Training camp is here. That's right. A week now on the ice. Some cuts have been made. And so Judd's Hockey Show back at full strength. It is Zolgad. It is, of course, AJ Fredrickson co-hosting and producing as he always does. And also the wonderfully talented Jessi Pierce, who has been probably spending more time at Tria Orthopedic Center rink watching hockey practice than she has at her own house. But she has returned home to join us. Jessi, how are things going in St. Paul? I saw you on Saturday, but I know that you've been at practice a lot more than I have.
Saturday, I didn't even have to be there, but my children requested that I went there. And being the good mother I am, I obliged them because why not? No, I was out there this morning. I did not stick around, obviously, for the second group that took on the ice at noon. Bummer news about Matt Boldy. However, it does seem fairly minor. It doesn't, in John Hines, his reaction, he definitely, and of course, he's not going to breathe air into it. And week to week, I think.
Oh my God,
the dramatic comes
in,
right?
He's
like
lost a leg.
Week to week is crazy, but we saw him. He was bebopping around at the rink. I think he's still obviously working out, doing some conditioning stuff. So he'll be okay, guys. Let's take a big breath. It would be terrible if he wasn't, but I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, it sounds like he suffered some type of I don't know, foot, ankle, I don't know.
Yeah.
Injury on Saturday. Didn't realize it at first because he came in and did press. Like he talked to us. Went home, had some problems, and then, but yes, if the way that the Wild initially released the tweet, it's like, oh my God, what's this? But then to your point, Jess, John Hines, like, it's going to be, we expect him now, grain of salt, of course. We expect him to be ready for the opener against the Blue Jackets. So wait and see. But the last thing that this team needs is a guy who's a top 6 winger easily, if not a top 3, who's on the power play and now is going to be killing penalties, which we certainly can talk about, to be out for an extended period of time. All right. There's a lot to get to. I want to start with this, though. So Age, because he's always looking for trouble, was hunting around today, going through hockey shows, came across the Athletic Hockey Show, which is hosted by Max Boltman and Mark Lazerus, who is, I recall, was a longtime Blackhawks beat writer. So he's a Chicago guy. He is now the senior National Hockey League writer, or one of them, for the Athletic. And they were talking about Kirill Kaprizov. Now, just to put this in context, Kirill Kaprizov has a couple of years left on his contract. He's not eligible for an extension until July 1st of 25. So he can't sign one right now. I mean, it's a story because it's Kirill, guys, but he can't sign one right now. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot of people very interested to see what's going to happen next July if the Wild can sign him long-term. Here is Boltman and, more importantly, Lazerus talking about Kirill Kaprizov's future.
Would you be worried about Kaprizov leaving at this point for them?
Absolutely, I'd be worried about that. I was at the draft, and I put this in a story, and I heard from so many people that are affiliated with teams and people that aren't, that Kirill Kaprizov wants to come to Chicago next year. And wouldn't that be something? I mean, oh my God, you put him on a wing with Bedard, that'd be incredible. Now, take it with a grain of salt. This was, a year and a half, 2 years out. A lot can change between now and then. But, look, if he wants to win, I love Minnesota. Like it's the best fan base in the league. Certainly the best stateside fan base in the league to me. It's the best arena in the league. I love everything about the Minnesota Wild, except for the fact that they're just stuck. And they've been mediocre. They're never awful, but they're never really all that good. And if you are, Kaprizov's late 20s by this point. I mean, he wasn't like an 18-year-old when he came over. You look around, you might not think that this is the place for you, that might be a better path to a championship somewhere else. And if I'm a Wild fan, I am deeply concerned about Kirill Kaprizov's future because he's phenomenal. And he's the first truly exciting talent you've had really to hang your hat on. And until he signs, and he still very, very well might re-sign. I mean, this is the NHL. Guys tend to stay. I'd be deeply concerned about that.
Let's go around the room. And again, this is just, I mean, it sounds like it's reckless speculation, which we, of course, at Score North love, but it's born from some conversations. So Jessi, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts about that? Something, nothing, or a little bit in between? A little bit of both, a little gray.
At first, it almost sounded like Laz was being a little facetious when he said, I heard he wants to come to Chicago, right? I mean, that's the tone that I heard.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a shock that I imagine Kirill Kaprizov would entertain elsewhere, especially if this season does not go according to plan. If the Minnesota Wild do not make the playoffs this year, I think you are very slim chances that Kirill Kaprizov is going to sign. I just don't think enough has necessarily been shown to him that this is the real deal. Now, again, I don't know what conversations are had behind closed doors. Bill Guerin, as much as he might tell us he's not talking to him yet, we haven't spoken. BS. You have talked to him. And if you haven't, that's a larger issue, right? Like you better have been speaking about this and figuring out, because yes, while it's not something that necessarily comes forward until this summer, it needs to start being in the works now. I mean, we saw how difficult it was to get Kirill here in the first place. And I think Laz has a point. The Minnesota Wild, I've seen the insults hurled numerous times from other National League members that a lot of people just forget about Minnesota, right? You just forget that they kind of exist because they haven't done anything extraordinary. They haven't done anything poor either for you to be forefront of the mind. And I think Kirill might see that as like, interesting. Although Kirill's a quiet guy, he doesn't need the fanfare. I just think Chicago seems like a really weird fit to me. I don't see that as being a landing place for him. Now, of course, maybe it's because I haven't spouted Chicago enough. I just don't see it. But yeah, I think other than that, it's a fair point. Why would Kirill sign here? You need to give him a reason to sign here. And right now, I don't think the Wild have done enough as far as on ice success in order to entice him.
Age? What'd you think of that?
I mean, obviously, I'm nervous about it because I do want Kirill Kaprizov to remain in a Minnesota Wild uniform. I do think it's a little funny, though, to say, like, if he wants to go to a place where he's set up more to win, and I understand the run that they had in, like, the early 2010s. But if you look at the most recent seasons, to follow that statement up with, he'd be fantastic in Chicago, a team that was dead last, and then was only a point or two above the lowly Coyotes in the Western Conference. So it's kind of funny to say that, but yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about it, because just for what Jessi said, I mean, as much as I want to say he's probably like he likes it here, and we've talked about this in the past, I love the safety blanket of reassuring ourselves that he's got that lunch pail, blue collar attitude and mindset, and he loves coming to work here. I mean, the fans love him. I think more so than what we've seen for really anybody in a Wild sweater before. He's the only guy that I've seen that has, when he scores, his own like sound bar cue thing or the Opa. Like nobody else has gotten.
He's superstar.
The superstar level.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a temptation, and I know, Judd, you go back to this for just Russians in general. The bright lights in New York City, the Big Apple, da 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 da,
Yeah.
Russian up the line. Like it could be. I don't know. We'll work on that.
A little borscht.
Something like
Good.
that.
Good dish. Borscht. Yeah. I like the borscht.
It makes me nervous. And I know we can't really speculate too much on like actual details until it probably gets closer to that July 1st when he's actually eligible. And if that date rolls around and we get it 8 a.m. on the dot, hey, 8 more years, Kirill Kaprizov in Minnesota, something like that, then by all means. But as soon as you get like a week, you get 2 weeks past that, it's like, oh, what's going on? But it all starts, I think, this season. Like Jessi said, and it's frustrating because I don't think this is a season where they are in a position to make the playoffs. But you're going to probably have to try or really show him outside of that, like the players coming up. And I think that is probably the biggest thing, more so than actually making the playoffs, is showing him that the pieces are going to be there and are developing so that when he does put pen to paper for that final season, hey, we're already off and running. We've already cemented some sort of future. Now you're confident in us.
But you were supposed to have shown him that the past couple seasons, and I don't know necessarily think it's been there, right?
Yeah.
So like, Jessi, what is the, like, this is the, in my opinion, the conversation. Like, I don't think this team is primed to, if they make the playoffs, I'll be surprised. That's as simple as I can put this. Do I hate their talent? No, I think they've got some talent. I don't think they're there yet, though. I think those contracts have to come off the books. I think that, Guerin has to be able to really for the first time since he got here, probably, right? Seriously dip into free agency potentially. So what is the solution here? Like is age right, Jess? Do you just need to show Kirill and his representatives that you're on the right path? Is there a win now mentality that could almost become a negative because I don't think that you're there, and sometimes trying to force it's a bad idea? Like, I'm really interested in what the answer is here. What does Kirill Kaprizov need to see? Because quite frankly, if it's like a playoff berth and a first round win, I think we're all barking up the wrong tree there.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, those pieces should have been put in place with your Brock Faber, with your Matt Boldy, right? You had shown Kirill, these are our two cornerstone pieces along with you. I think that was kind of the move. I don't love, and I've been thinking about this more and more. How different would it have been if Danelia Yurov came over and if you didn't have Freddie Gaudreau still on the books, right? Because Danelia doesn't come over because there's probably a very limited opportunity for him to break into the roster, given that those slots are all taken up by these contract extensions that we've discussed in the past. I do think you're stymieing these young pieces. I mean, we talk about that time and time again, how they're not getting the opportunity that maybe they deserve because you have that logjam of forwards up there. Well, so how are you showing Kirill? Then how are you going to say our future is bright when our future is stuck down in Iowa, and not because they necessarily deserve to be in Iowa? I think your next best bet is you use this free agency money that you are going to get. And again, remember, Brock Faber contract kicks in next year, Jake Middleton contract. So, I mean, you're not going to have nearly as much money as everybody think, right? And I don't want to necessarily go spend it on one player, but I think you go to Kirill and say, hey, I have X amount. What do you want? What do you need? And
Right.
and make that kind of tit for tat situation and say, I will give you the piece or pieces that you need to be successful. I think that's your only kind of other option, is have Kirill be in control, have him have a say, and not to say that he hasn't already. And again, Bill Guerin has made moves with his hands behind his back, but I don't think from a prospect perspective, you have shown him enough, because you can't. How could you when you have Marcus Johansson as a top 6 forward? I think it's hard to sell the future when you're not showcasing the future at all.
And that's what's weird. And that's why first of all, the contracts drive me crazy. We've talked about that a lot. But so here's what I don't get about the start of camp. So camp has started. It's a week old, all right? And let's just say for a second that this is like a make or break year. I mean, let's just say that Kirill Kaprizov, his potential signing on July 1st of next year hinges on what this team shows him. And it's going to have to show him a lot. How on God's green earth do you start training camp with Kirill Kaprizov? I get he's playing with Mets. Zucchi's his guy, the passing twins. But what is Ryan Hartman doing in between those two? And I know that a couple of years ago they had a great year and it was a feel-good story, and Ryan Hartman was a first-round pick at one time. And he got a role in this team. I'm not saying he doesn't. But John Hines has said that they're going to get to a point where Marco Rossi is going to also work with those two. But why would you not have Marco work with them from day one of training camp? Because to me, I'm sorry, if I'm Kirill, I might like Hartsey a lot. Might be the greatest guy on the face of the earth. But is that really what you're showing him? Because the one thing Lazerus mentioned, and he's not wrong on this, is if I say to you, Jessi, you're representing Kirill Kaprizov. We got a young man, Connor Bedard, here. And he is one of the best players on the planet, and I want your guy on his wing. And then I come back and say, well, hold on a second here. You've got to be loyal to my team, and I've got Ryan Hartman. What are we doing here?
I mean, Ryan Hartman was once a Blackhawk, so
former first
they were
round
the
pick?
ones that took him
I
first
know
round.
that,
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
get all that, but I'm just saying.
You're right.
Like, if we're right on the conversation, like if Jessi's right, like let's say this is like the make or break. What are we doing here?
I mean, again, I don't think the Hartman play is going to last very long. I do think John Hines is committed to moving things around. We even saw that group was separated today. And obviously Matt Boldy being out for likely the rest of camp has changed a lot of things and a lot of different looks. So, I mean, it's maybe forcing them to make those movements earlier. Right. Yeah, I don't think Ryan Hartman is the play. The unfortunate thing is I think Marco Rossi fits better there too, but you won't have a center that compares. That's what I'm saying. You do not have a center that compares to you don't have a player on the roster that compares to
but
that.
Marco's a lot, but I feel if he can prove it, I like that a lot more than veteran, long in the tooth, journeyman who might be really a third line guy or a fourth line guy who can play the wing and center. That to me is not the option.
No. But Marcus Johansson over Liam Ogren isn't the option. But so that's what I'm saying, right? Like that's the problem though, is you're going to you have these other players that you think are already in place, and it's like, no, they can't be, because that's not going to excite anybody. That's not exciting the fan base. We've all heard and the gripes and moans, but that's definitely not going to excite Kirill. So that's why I think your only other option at this point, and I say that because these guys are under contract, right? Like you can't do anything with a Freddie Gaudreau or Marcus Johansson without buyouts or, losing a lot on them. So you're stuck this year. You have to unfortunately wait until free agency, which I don't love, right? I just don't know. I think it's very challenging to get any pieces in place for Kirill to be equally as excited about until then, frankly.
So it comes down to one thing. You're going to have to pay. I mean, you're going to have to pay him. And the cap is going up, and we're seeing contracts go up. So guys, is the Draisaitl contract the starting point?
Probably. I mean, right around there.
And you can go 8 years with him, and like the Blackhawks or the Rangers are at 7 years, right? So you can tack on a year by being his current team. But I mean, is the Draisaitl contract which Jessi questioned to the general manager of the Wild, Billy Guerin, is that where we're starting at?
Probably. I mean, that's where he's going to start at, right? He deserves to have that. And I like Leon Draisaitl. I do. I think he's a very, very good player too. And good for Kirill. He deserves to be in those superstar conversations. I think, again, because he plays for the Minnesota Wild, he is overlooked in a lot of those conversations because people forget that they exist and they forget that they're a thing. I think you're seeing a lot of young guys too, though, get extensions that are insane. Again, we go back to Lucas Raymond of the Detroit Red Wings. You look at Mercer. Matthew Nye's conversations are going to be starting. The Winnipeg Jets do just a bridge deal with Cole Perfetti, excuse me. It's very weird. It's very interesting. So I think you pay attention to all of it, really. I mean, it's not going to be cheap, but Bill Guerin has known that. I think he's kept that in mind with every player that he's added on.
But that's going
to be a lot of money. Yeah, it's a lot of money, and you have to prepare yourself and then the problem is, you allot that. What are you left with what can you afford?
Age, exactly right. Like that's the thing, right? Like he's going to break the bank. And now if he, and now who am I going to get to go play by him who's a star player when I don't, it feels like you're sort of stuck here. And I'm not saying Kirill's gone. I'm saying the roster construction will be very intriguing to watch if he does come back based on what we just discussed.
Timeout. So you saying that is exactly what I was trying to tell Billy Guerin about Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Let's remind him that.
I threw you under the bus. I've told you that before. There was no age, and I completely piled
can't
on.
afford players around him.
It was like a grade school bully thing. I have fully come clean. I knew what you were saying.
God damn it.
Age, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, what I will say is thanks to Jessi, we do know that Bill Guerin is all right if he feels the player is worth it, paying that sort of fee.
Good point. She got it out of him.
So, I mean, credit to Jessi, and because nobody else is asking those tough, hard-nosed questions. That's a good point. The question there is whether or not Bill Guerin feels that Kirill Kaprizov is up to that Leon Draisaitl type of money. They're going to probably start there, but I think you could definitely argue that Draisaitl is a better player, so maybe they can get a wiggle room of going down, but then it's the other side of, well, you don't want to lose me either. And I'm your Leon Draisaitl. I'm your Connor McDavid. So how about we just bring that number right back up? My fear is that we reach an impasse and there is no agreement. There is no mutual number that can be slid across the table and given a thumbs up. And now you have a Kevin Fiala type of situation, but ramped up to $1 million, where credit to Bill Guerin because he made the deal. And I think he's won it, no doubt. Brock Faber coming back in that deal was amazing. This is a different animal. This would be a different animal. You are not going to, you know exactly what Kirill Kaprizov is. You're not going to get any player, I think, that is at that level or close to that level in any sort of return, and every other team knows that. You're already at a disadvantage. You have to, I think, at the end of the day, you're going to have to probably pay the number that he needs to, maybe get some sort of like, Kirill, can you come down like $500,000, please? Maybe he can. He inks that.
I don't think his reps will.
I don't think so either. Just given also what Lazerus said in the clip, he came over later in like age-wise too. So it's not like he was able to sign this when he was look at Brock Faber signing this deal at age of 21. He's signing whatever deal this is at probably 28 years old if they do it right away next summer. So, God, it's going to be really it's going to be a giant panic. I think we're going to have bedlam here in Minnesota, but Bill Guerin has also shown that he's able to navigate a very tight kind of cap-restricted team. He's done so over his tenure here with the Wild ever since buying out both Parise and Suter. So he's really no stranger to that type of, playing with one hand behind your back type of situation.
Jess?
Well, one thing, that number is going to be real high when Kirill pots 50 goals this year, because we all know that's probably going to happen. But the other thing, the bigger concern, I don't think it's necessarily the money, though. We've seen Kirill. We know how Kirill is. Marian Gaborik was offered more by the Minnesota Wild than the New York Rangers offered him, and he didn't want to. Now, I'm not trying to make, obviously, the comparison. I know how Gaborik's a very polarizing player here in Minnesota for right reason. I think you have to also approach that. It's not the money for Kirill. Sure, it might be for his agents. It is the winning mentality. It's the successful pieces. So I'm less concerned about what that dollar amount is. I'm more concerned at putting the pieces around him that show that he is on a team that is destined to win, that he is not in a market that's just very mild and meek and just kind of there. I think that's the bigger thing that Kirill is going to look at. I think he's not going to walk away because, it wasn't enough money, or, I demand that. And not to say that, of course, he probably wants to get paid what he deserves. But to me, I think the bigger issue is going to be, can he win a Stanley Cup here? I
personally think he's back. Like, I think he signs. I think he stays. And I would pay him. Like, my question of, do we start at what Draisaitl got, which is a no duh? Of course we do. Was just that's a huge investment. He's worth it though. I think he stays. I think he's back. I think he signs before the season starts 25, 26. Because if he doesn't, age is right. All hell is going to break loose. Jessi, do you think he signs next summer, or do you think we're sitting here at this time next year, about a week and a half, 2 weeks from the season starting, and Kirill Kaprizov is unsigned? Because if that's the case, there's going to be a lot of talk about when do you trade him if you don't get this done? Because the disaster of Gaborik was you let him walk.
You let him walk.
You walked him right. You cannot walk a superstar into free agency if you're convinced he doesn't want to stay.
I don't know, you guys. I really tussle with this. My gut says no. He's got, that's just my gut. I am only basing it off of that. Really, it's my gut that it's going to be very, very hard. I think you got to woo, and I don't know if we're wooing hard enough sometimes. I really don't. My gut says no. My gut says no. I'm sorry. I know.
AJ.
I'm sorry. I'm just here to make people mad sometimes, I think.
No, it's your opinion. I got no problem with it. I think it's Armageddon if they lose him.
I don't want that to happen at all. I want to do everything possible to keep him, because as we've discussed, it's not that he's just this electric player and that he's fun to watch. He's a hard worker and he's a good kid. Like, it's the type of player that you want in your organization, without question, right?
I do agree with that. He seems like a really good kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think he does, but it really is only dependent on if they get some of these younger guys higher up in the lineup. If you keep putting a Ryan Hartman up there, if you keep pairing him, if you keep pairing him with these guys that, no offense to Matt Zuccarello, I know they're great friends and everything like that, but at a certain point, you need to show him that, a Liam Ogren can perform in a top six situation. Because if you're burying him in the bottom six and Marco Rossi is on the third line centering between, Marcus Foligno and whoever else, that's an issue, because that shows you that's just showing him that, this is the role that those guys are in. And he gets that in his head, even though he's thinking maybe they're fine, maybe they're, they're young and whatever. You're telling him this is their role right now. We don't really have much expectations for them. So if they can just get some of these guys up in the lineup and they perform above what we're expecting, and then, it's a two-parter there, because you can put them there, but if they don't perform, then who knows? And that could be maybe where they fall on their sword. these guys maybe aren't going to pan out. And then that creates that shred of doubt. And then we go down Jessi's dark path of,
but you got to take that risk.
He's gallivanting around the rest of the league getting wooed. You have to take that risk.
I'd rather take that risk.
For the sake of us too, that tells us where this team is at.
Correct.
And not this, you've had the limbo of this dead cap. It's finally coming off next year. You had the limbo of when is Kirill eventually going to come over. Now we're in this limbo of like, when's he going to sign? We've been told for 4 years now, it feels like, oh, they've got such a great prospect pool. This farm system is unmatched. It's a top 3 one. Like, when are we going to see it?
Right.
When are we going to see it, Bill Guerin? Show me that these young guys are actually going to get in the lineup and they can play and they can develop and they can perform so that eventually here in the years 25, 26, 27, this team is a powerhouse. Because Lazerus is right in a sense. This Wild team, they're not bad enough to ever pick in the top 5. They're just not.
It's a major part of the problem.
But they're not ever good enough to get past the first round either. So which one is it going to be? Let's at least get our cards on the table, push our chips in, and find out exactly what this is. And at the end of the day, if you lose the best player you've had in franchise history, you're forced to trade him. That's the price of playing.
And you're not going to win that trade.
No, and that's
the Fiala trade. You fortunately won. I don't know how, but you did. But I mean, and that's a goal scorer. Going good, he was great. Yeah. But I mean, there was always the off chance that, because he could go through his Fiala-esque times. Kirill doesn't do that. So yeah. Hey, let's,
the thing is though, is that Wild fans, you have a year to come to the conclusion and get grips on, you're going to lose this trade if it happens. That's just the matter of fact. You're not going to win that trade.
Well, the team's got a year to convince him he should stay. And one of the closed door things too, Jess, that they need to both talk about is this. To AJ's point about the veterans, right? Who I think, I mean, we both been around the room enough to know that, I think Kirill has a lot of friends there. I mean, he's a popular guy. He's funny. I think that he has spoken English pretty damn well for a long time, and he doesn't around us, and he does now more, and which is all fine. But the come to Jesus, I think between both sides has to be this. If you want to win, some of your friends got to go. We'll bring in the kids. We need to, right? But I mean, we can't keep Matts forever. I don't know if he's close to guys like JoJo or not. I hope he's not, but he might be. I have no idea. But I mean, so that's part of this too, is like the upheaval that this roster needs is going to be a big part of like, this is a business, Kirill, and we want to win, and you are good enough to win. But the roster needs to be in some ways reconstructed from within, which is going to mean that some of the guys that you see a lot around here and that you clearly like simply cannot be here long term.
I mean, and he's smart. He recognizes that, right? Like, we make a big deal about him and Matts, and that's all fine and well, but you can still be friends with, it happens all the time. You can still have friends on the other team, right? Matt Dumba out doesn't stop him from getting a gathering together when he's in town, right? Like, I mean, I don't think that Kirill is going to have a problem with that. Sure, it might be kind of a bummer, but I think, again, winning is all he wants, right? Like, that is his number one forefront. He's never been shy about that. He's never changed from that mentality from since he was a young kid, right? It's what he wants to do more than anything. So I think it would be just fine. I don't think that that's going to make, I think Matt Zuccarello will say he gets traded at deadline because they want to give him an opportunity to go in. I don't think that's going to break the opportunity for Kirill to stay here, right? I think it's much, much more than that. Fun fact, it's actually supposed to be Kirill, not Kirill.
No,
yeah,
Kirill?
Kirill. I learned that today.
Is that
from him?
Yeah.
Is that what he prefers?
It's apparently the real pronunciation is Kirill.
So we just all assumed
because it doesn't rhyme with thrill. So
us dumb Americans.
So like why? So
it's Jakob Lauko, not Jacob. In case you guys were saying that too, it's Jakub Lauko.
Jakub Lauko. It's time for fighting, is what it is.
Right? I mean, when I write these things, it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, I'm going to try to make a better.
Did Kirill correct you?
No, I was talking to one of the radio folks, and they said it should actually be Kirill.
No, I'm sticking with Kirill. Screw it.
Yeah. I bet you will.
Hey, Jessi, tell me about, I believe that you were involved in this media scrum last week. Tell me about the fact that when I was at practice on Saturday, I heard that Filip Gustavsson, was not exactly in a good mood, which intrigues me because for a goaltender, that dude is ordinarily the most outgoing, you know, nice. I don't know what the word is, but he's a very welcoming person ordinarily. But those that were involved in the scrum, including you, it sounds like all said he was very curt. He did not have a lot of time for questions. What's your feeling there? Because threatening to carry 3 goaltenders is one thing. Threatening to carry 3 with one not very pleased about his life and his working situation becomes, I think, potentially almost untenable.
We followed up with John Hines and asked, how do you feel Gus's mental state is heading into camp? What do you think? And Hines didn't seem concerned with it by any means. I hope, and I don't blame Gus if there is any kind of anger or animosity. Dude, use that. Use that as fuel to say, prove us wrong, right? I mean, I get it. Us media members have been talking about trading him, talking about how poor his numbers have been for a year. I wouldn't be thrilled to see me either, I suppose. I don't blame him, but I want to see him use that. I mean, it's a very important season for Filip Gustavsson, right? I mean, you got to silence the critics, silence the noise by doing so with your play. Come out, rebound. He did come into camp in great shape, which is something that we haven't been able to say the past 2 seasons. So, I mean, you can see that he's taking it very seriously. And not to say that he wasn't before, but yeah, like I think he recognizes the seriousness of it. Like if you want to stay here, man, and you want to stay in this league, you got to show a heck of a lot more than you did last year. So I think that's kind of where any of that maybe tension came from a little bit, is that it's a big year for Filip Gustavsson. Again, I hope he does great. I hope it's a situation where good, we have 2 great goaltenders to start next year in Filip Gustavsson and Jesper Wallstedt. I hope that's the case. I don't know. We will not know until we get in-game action. I think he is actually going to be playing the entire game on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken about that. Yes, I think that's the plan right now. So, I mean, again, take that with a grain of salt, as you do with Jesper's game against the Jets. But yeah, I think Filip Gustavsson feels the pressure, as he should, and it's his opportunity to prove everybody wrong.
AJ, you got anything off that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing is that if you're upset, prove us that you're wrong. But at the same time, if you're really not thrilled about it, does that maybe say that behind the scenes he has been told, hey, this is where we have talks that are in the works. Maybe we know
they shopped him all summer, didn't they? Like he was actively shopped. He's got no protection.
Yeah.
And does that say that maybe he didn't even expect at this point of the year to show up wearing anything Minnesota Wild? Like, did he expect to already be gone and with a new team by now? Who knows? But we don't really necessarily know exactly how many of these like almost over the goal line type of trades and all of a sudden stuff falls through, plans change. If he's not thrilled, you know what? I don't care. At this point, like either prove me wrong or, let's get a deal moving so he can move on out and get the guy who's supposed to be the franchise goaltender for years to come up in the mix at some point. Because if you're going to show up another year where either you're out of shape or you have a bad mood, and frankly, this is professional hockey. As much as I want to like be able to root for guys, I want to see a team win. And last year, you weren't maybe the best guy for that at times. When you're on, frankly, you're great. And if you can get to that form again, then I will eat my words. I will have a Filip Gustavsson day every time you are in the crease. I don't care. But right now, you're not that guy. So let's figure it out. Are you going to be that guy or not?
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. Jessi, final training camp observations, thoughts, and anything else top of mind that we've ignored since we basically have Kaprizov going to the Kings, Boldy out for the season, and Gustavsson ticked off at life.
Brendan Gaunce, and I probably am butchering the heck out of that name.
Why don't you talk to the broadcast about his name?
I should have learned something. Dude, his shot is incredible. Like I was watching him today. He has a snipe that is just awesome. Like we were discussing, he could be a piece, an interesting piece that gets a very serious look here, especially depending on the Matt Boldy situation, right? And with Boldy not being a part of camp right now, he is getting a very firm look. But that's a name I think you guys should keep an eye on. We've talked about the Liam Ogrens. We've talked about Hunter Haight and Riley Heidt, and those two are very good players. I just think that they're not quite there yet. But I think Brendan Gaunce, that's a kid that you should kind of keep an eye on. I think he might be very sneaky, surprising, if not a guy that you see at some point this year if there's a recall for injury too. And then Damon Hunt, I thought, had a really, really good game the other night in Winnipeg. I think he's had a really, really solid camp as well. That one familiar to Wild fans, but another guy that's having a good camp for sure.
Gonch, 6'3", 220, left-handed shot, spent last year, looks like, in the Blue Jackets organization, played actually 24 games for Columbus, 2 goals and 4 points. So, yeah,
It sounds like an Adam Beckman all over again.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. I swear. That's what I thought at first too, but there's something.
Sure? You sure of that? You sure about that, Jessi Pierce?
I mean, it's what you wanted Adam Beckman to be. That's what it is.
Ooh,
Graham Clark doesn't look bad too. Speaking of Beckman, we spoke with Graham Clark today, whose parents, he was actually born here in Minnesota because his parents spent a year at the U of M dental school, and his mom was pregnant with Graham Clark when she went to the opener for the Minnesota Wild, the inaugural season. But he's also got a really nice shot too. He's not a bad
that game
player.
That makes me feel so
yeah,
old
this
when
kid's
that
24,
happens.
so there you go. Nice work.
Waconia guy. Okay.
Waconia, yeah.
Right.
But he doesn't claim. He's like, I'm definitely not a Minnesotan, but
He should claim it.
Born here. He's good.
Dude,
he gets dual
it.
citizenship for it, so there you go.
If he's in a Wild sweater, the masses are not going to stop with the
state of hockey for that,
yes,
that kid,
absolutely.
right?
Yes.
All right, great stuff, guys. We will reconvene next week. Hopefully, have some positive news regarding Boldy's return. We are inching closer and closer to the start of the regular season. October 12th, right, Jessi? Against the Columbus Blue Jackets at the X. Judd, Jessi, AJ. We'll talk to you soon.
No.